our communities here on time.
So, should we stay?
Yeah, okay, you know what, then why don't we just start with item 1, being Chris is here. Chris, you want to give us a presentation?
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
We're really excited about the what is it? I've never
They're from
heard-
Save Our Seaport, they've asked if they can videotape it.
Who?
Save Our Seaport.
Oh, okay. Where do you want me to stand? Okay, where I am.
Do you have any visuals?
No.
Then that's perfect,
Okay.
because you got the map there in case you want to.
Well, hey Julie, up for deathbed to come here. Thank you. Don't call me anybody.
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, we're really excited. As you all know, we were just successful with the ULERP, and we decided we'd stay open for the summer. So the question is, what are you doing to activate the Seaport? And what we've done is we've gone to a lot of the tenants on Front Street that weren't able to open quickly, and we offered them opportunities to open in Pier 17 building. I don't know, the Salt and Pod just opened up within the last week, and we were talking to other tenants as well. Hopefully they'll be able to make themselves available.
They're thrilled too, they're doing very well, I understand.
They're very happy. I looked at it yesterday. They have a nice operation.
They would like for you to stay open for the next 2 years.
Do me a favor, let's just have him speak and let's be recognized.
Okay, so we actually are talking to the tenants on Front Street that haven't been able to open. Hopefully we'll find a place for them in Pier 17. We're also going to activate the Uplands area, which is the area we call the Uplands. It's all South Street Seaport, but west of FDR, where the museum is, and also Fulton Market Building and the museum block and the Club Wrestling Building, the Toco Building. We're going to energize that area, and one of the most exciting things we have there is, and they're going to be here, they're on the agenda, Brooklyn Flea is going to be opening up an operation for us on Front Street and also on Fulton Street, and I'll let them talk about that more. But we're excited about that. That's the beginning of what we hope will be many more things to announce. We just are not ready to announce everything, but we will have a very exciting environment starting Memorial Day weekend. That's our launch for the season, okay? Clipper City's coming back. They're going to be on Pier 17 as well. And so everyone that was out here talking about what they wanted to do during the summer will be there. We're talking to also our existing tenants that are in the Pier building that had gotten their terminations. We're giving them the opportunity to stay. They have to sign license agreements, but they can stay through the summer through September 9th, like we talked about. And so we think that it'll be great, and we're waiting to hear what's going on with the museum. And I hope that everybody comes out and starts enjoying South Street Seaport this summer. It's going to be great.
What was the reaction you got from Front Street? Any of the businesses other than Salty Falls?
And what about Front Street?
Coming over to you?
Well, Philip, our new general manager, I wanted to introduce him, Philip St. Pierre. He's running the show. He's the man. Okay, he's not Michael Piazzolla's replacement. He's an improvement. Michael's great, but he's fantastic.
What's the title?
General manager. General manager.
Okay.
Okay, I know you all know Michael, and you hadn't seen the general manager since Michael left. And here's the guy. You all know Lincoln too, and then there's Chris behind him. The brain trust of South Street Seaport is in good hands with them. And Adam Meister right here is a VP of Development. He is really been instrumental with getting us through the ULIP process. And as you may or may not know, I'm a recently transplanted Angelino. I live in New York now, so I'm not an out-of-town developer. Okay?
But do you live in
I don't live in
Newport?
the district. No,
That's the thing.
But I work in the district, okay? So I'm a constituent.
Does this mean you're going to try to get on our board?
So,
On this committee?
yeah. So anyhow, as it relates to the Front Street tenants, I thought, Philip, maybe you might say, you've been talking to a lot of them. I mentioned
have.
Salty Paw.
I've talked to a number of the tenants that are, trying to get back open, trying to establish their businesses again. We're in middle negotiations with a couple of tenants. I can't really share who they are right now. But I've talked to about half a dozen at this point in time, and there's a couple that have expressed interest. So we're more than happy to help them get their businesses back open, if only just to have a presence on the pier while their permanent residence on Front Street gets back and running.
Okay.
So when are you gonna be able to show us your plans of how you're gonna activate?
When is your meeting in May?
And May,
It's the second Tuesday of the month.
third Tuesday of the month.
Uh,
May
I will
21st.
tell you.
May 21st.
Oh, you know, it'll probably be out by then, but I'm happy to come back then oh, you know, I won't be here on the 21st, I apologize.
Can we change our meeting earlier in the month?
But between now and then,
For May?
Do we have a calendar?
Why don't we see if we can change
We're
our
just trying to
date?
get the
We have a
calendar.
quorum.
I know. Why don't we see if we could change our date earlier so we can get the plans before they actually take place?
I would say the first, maybe second week in May, we should be able to show this.
So maybe the second Tuesday, I don't know what.
Okay, Diana will do that. So for the people who just arrived, you just want to quickly give a snapshot of what your plans are to activate the Seaport area again, talking about what you plan to do with the Brooklyn.
Well, I think one of the great things we can do is bring people down and experience the Seaport as they've never experienced it before, or for many, many years since we have the kind of activities we're promoting with Brooklyn Flea. I'll let them talk about their operation, but they're really gonna open up a food service on Front Street, and also they're gonna be proposing a bar operation on Front Street and on Fulton Street, which is part of our activation for the South Street Seaport for the summer. We're gonna bring in some temporary structures on Fulton and Front Street that'll house these businesses, and we're very excited about it. And hopefully I'll be able to show you, we're working through all the issues with EDC, LPC, the city, and so, I see you're circling dates.
Well, currently, you're on the agenda for Tuesday, May 21st. Thank you, Diana. We can move you to Monday, the 6th.
6?
That's in the evening?
Yeah.
Yes, at 6 PM. Is that,
Oh, wait,
Any other day that week, is that the only day that works?
Yeah, but that-
But, yeah, it's Tuesday.
yeah, Monday the 6th is fine.
well, or we
Would be
can
the
move it to the 7th, which is, yeah, because Battery Park City Committee.
Seventh
really
is better.
wants-
No, it's not the first.
If that,
Or we can do a second room and that there's a trifecta, or there's,
The 14th, we got youth committee, and maybe we could, oh, you want, we're gonna be on the youth committee, so we can't do
we
it.
could do it,
Thursday. It's only a week away.
because you're gonna be releasing your information when?
I think the 6th might be a little early, actually.
6, okay, so you'd rather the week of the 13th?
Sure.
You want to do it Monday the 13th then?
Check your calendar. How we did before all these things. We used to have a book.
Yeah.
You know, fine.
You need to have, please sit at the
Good, let
table
you
so the
know.
board members can sit at the table. While we're waiting, I would also want to make sure that you
I'm sorry, I knew
welcome.
there was a reason that was a problem. Our board meeting is gonna be in Dallas on the 14th, so I won't be able to be here. But that week of the 6th, I can do it, just the 6th, I think it's a little early. If there's another day that week, I
The
can.
7th on Tuesday then?
Let's do that.
Okay, so we're
Seven-
going
no,
to
the
move,
7th is no good for
oh, the
us.
7th doesn't work for
That's no
you?
good, no.
Oh, okay.
So you want,
We can do the 8th, the 9th.
okay, so either the 8th or 9th, we'll get back to you.
Pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Yeah, Ralph.
Yeah, Chris, I'm Rip Chef, I wrote you recently.
Thank you very much.
And over the weekend, I went and saw Amanda at the Salty Pond. She's absolutely delighted with the situation, I just wanted to personally thank her. It's a wonderful
Thank you
thing
for
for
saying
you.
that. We're happy to help. Thank you.
How many other businesses have found locations besides Salty Pond?
I'm in talks with 2 others right now that look pretty good. Look like we might be able to pull something off. It's hard with the restaurants because it's a little more capital intensive to get that up and running. It takes a little more time. And Amanda was great. She saw the opportunity and we went with it. There's a few others that I'm talking to, but it's still early days.
And the Paris is gonna open in, what, 2 months?
Well, that's on Front Street.
Right.
So there's businesses
No,
that are
just-
moving, yeah. We don't know.
In general.
We hear that, but we don't know for sure. Any questions, anybody else?
Before the Brooklyn Flea tells us about their plans.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Then I'll be back on.
You're going to be back the 8th or the 9th.
Okay.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, let's move on. Jerry, you ready from South Street Seaport?
Sure.
Museum?
Should I stand?
Yeah, wherever you want us to, wherever you're comfortable. You want to be in the camera, you gotta stand here. How's that? You want to have your picture taken over here?
I just want to take one moment to introduce one of our two new board members who's here, Marco Passanella. So, and if the other. Oh, Jason, I didn't see you over there. He's our second new member. Please sit at the table. This is for the community, South Street Seaport
You can
community
sit
sit at the
there.
table.
I think this might even be a better seat, if that's okay.
I'll take mine because I'm leaving soon.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I'm not on this committee.
welcome to the committee, Honorable both of you.
Thank you.
Sharon?
So thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak tonight. Unfortunately, Susan Henshaw-Jones is unable to be here. She's actually receiving an award tonight for her work in design, which is very well deserved. But I have some notes here about the status of the South Street Seaport Museum. So where we are currently is post-Hurricane Sandy. The museum was able to reopen the galleries on 12 Fulton Street, which is wonderful because the galleries were upstairs on the 3rd floor. But because of the flooding in the basement, all of the electrical systems, the HVAC systems, etc., were completely submerged by the storm. And so the museum would be very interested in relocating that equipment upstairs and out of the path of a future flood. But that could probably be a couple of years project. In the meantime, we're unable to properly climatize the galleries on Fulton Street. So we're fine during the winter months because we had temporary heat coming in, and the galleries being upstairs and the hot air rising, everything worked in our favor. With the summer weather coming, we can't pump cold air upstairs. So we closed the galleries on 12 Fulton Street, and we're looking at refocusing our attention around the corner onto Water Street. We've done some cleanup work in bound printers and have recently reopened bound printers at 207 and 209 Water Street, along with the Maritime Crafts Center. And probably in about a week or so, we should be reopening Bound and Company stationers at 211 Water Street. 213, 215 Water Street, where the museum had its Titanic exhibition a year ago, would be the next space that we'd be interested in making repairs to so we can install an exhibition there. Unfortunately, that facility, the floor was completely destroyed by the storm surge and needs to be replaced, and there's a lot of electrical work that has to be replaced in there as well. So, so we've got some work ahead of us. The museum just recently signed an extension. As most people know, the City Museum had entered into a 12-month agreement to take over managing the South Street Seaport Museum. And that agreement ended in October 5th. We had the option to extend the agreement for an additional 6 months, which we did, and that agreement ended April 5th. And so we just entered into another 3-month extension, which will take us to July 5th. So it's during this time that we're trying to figure out what the next steps will be for the museum. But in our negotiations and conversations with different parties, it takes us to the point where one of the main issues that we have is, with all due respect, in dealing with the lease and our relationship with the Howard Hughes Corporation. So from our perspective, the Howard Hughes Corporation's actions to date signify that the museum will not likely survive, and that the Howard Hughes Corporation doesn't seem to have an interest in our survival. We have indications so far are, one, a letter to Margaret Chin, allowing the Ambrose to remain at Pier 16. It's qualified in such a way that it means nothing more than the verbal assurance that we currently have. And we have a letter here to Margaret Chin that I can submit. Basically, it just allows for the museum to keep the Ambrose at Pier 16 as long as it does not interfere with the operations of Pier 17, or if another vessel comes in there, as long as it doesn't take up any space larger than the footprint that the Ambrose currently occupies. So, and I don't know. Margaret Chin was able to gain a commitment from Howard Hughes Corporation that HHC would grant us $750,000 over a 6-month period, but on the proviso that the Seaport Museum signs a 12-month extension of our agreement. The Seaport Museum is running out of cash right now. This amount is insufficient to our waterfront requirements. Moreover, the City Museum, as I mentioned, just signed the extension for just 3 months, which would take us to July 5th. The tall ships at Pier 16 we all, I think, agree that they give authenticity to Pier 17 and to the project that's going on in Pier 17. And they help draw visitors to the district. Thus, we asked in August of 2012 that Howard Hughes support the ships on a restricted basis, meaning that any money that we receive from them would be dedicated specifically to the ships, in the amount of $125,000 to $150,000 each year for the next 5 years. The ships benefit Howard Hughes Corporation. The letter was addressed to David Weinreb, the CEO of HHC, and his response was to say that he would commit to $150,000 annually for 10 years if we would give up our leasehold interests along Water Street. So, we obviously were not asking for a trade that would benefit the Howard Hughes Corporation at the expense of the Seaport Museum. In a recent meeting with Margaret Chin, Chris Curry was kind enough to say that he would reverse David Weinreb's decision for payments to keep up the ships. But to date, nothing has happened with regard to that request. And then I have here the letter that was sent to David Weinreb. Howard Hughes Corporation has declined almost every request made by us, either directly or via the EDC, concerning our 1981 lease, in which Howard Hughes also has rights of disapproval. This includes the ability to rent spaces within our control, including Pier 16, where we are currently limited to a 300 square foot space for retail use. They refused to grant the Seaport Museum any ground floor space, including the vacant corner buildings at Front and John Streets, and also including the ground floor space now occupied by Heartland Brewery. They have offered additional upper floor spaces, but that would keep the Seaport Museum as invisible as it currently is. I can also note that whenever we do sublease any of our spaces, we're currently acting illegally according to the lease, because the lease limits how we're able to utilize that space. But it's important to the museum to survive, to be able to make use of its spaces as much as possible so that we can monetize the capital. By disallowing any earned income from the Seaport Museum, they have refused to allow the Seaport Museum, as I said, to utilize the spaces under our control for our own benefit. Howard Hughes has no reason to help secure the museum's existence because they would get the square footage as a matter of right under the 1981 lease after 6 months of vacancy. So if the museum doesn't utilize its spaces for 6 months, then by default it gets turned over to the Howard Hughes Corporation. They have that option under the lease. They would acquire all of the spaces within the Seaport Museum at 12 Fulton Street and also the spaces along Water Street through that option in the 1981 lease. I have the lease, the clause in the lease that I can share with you, which has been, I guess, a point of confusion for some people because there were some people who didn't realize that it existed, but it's there.
When is this dated?
That's from 1981. Yes.
And this is still in effect?
That's still in effect.
What, 3 more months?
No, it's in effect.
No, that's in effect for the Seaport Museum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the long-term lease for the Seaport
Is
Museum.
there an end date on this?
I don't know if it's a 75 or a 90-year lease, but it's a very long-term. No, not expiring anytime soon.
And it was transferable from the previous.
From JGP and Rouse.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So the total amount of square footage that we're talking about is over 80,000 square feet of space. And the Howard Hughes Corporation has twice asked my permission to walk through the spaces with one of their architects. So the City Museum has 3 months to go on the extension. The Seaport Museum and the City Museum are doing everything in our power to make this work. But in fact, we have close to no winning cards in our hand. So it's a very dire situation that we're faced with.
You raised a number of very important issues and serious issues. But let me first go back to the Sandy-related issues. Have you gotten anything back from FEMA or insurance to make the
So,
repairs?
so two different points. So with FEMA, we've been working with a state representative, who's been our representative to FEMA, and we've submitted all of our paperwork for all of the cleanup work that we've done since the storm. And that was the first step. And so we're waiting to get some data back from her, and then eventually that gets submitted for repayment.
What's the timeframe?
So you have to lay the money out first to get reimbursed?
Yes, FEMA is a reimbursable grant,
That's
yes.
kind of dumb.
So I think that, as it's been explained to me, they've had situations in the past where they've laid out money to people and then people have not paid to have the actual work done. So everything now is a reimbursable.
Okay, what about insurance?
So insurance, the museum had $500,000 of building insurance on the properties on Spermahorn Row. So the 12 Fulton properties and the John Street properties. We had $500,000 worth of insurance. We submitted over $1 million worth of claims. We received $200,000 from the insurance company as an advance, and we were very hopeful and expecting to get the remaining $300,000. But then we received notice from the insurance company that there might be a conflict because Economic Development Corporation had its own flood insurance on the properties. So we've been working with EDC and the insurance company to rectify that. And at this point, it seems that EDC has filed their claims in such a way that shouldn't conflict with the museum's claims. And if the insurance company okays that, then we should be able to get the balance of our money. Otherwise, the museum is then required to return the $200,000, which we've received and have already spent.
Okay. How much, do you have an estimate of how much it's going to cost to get the museum up and running, get all the mechanicals moved? Do you have any?
Well, we have been, to relocate everything out of the basement and put it somewhere up above would probably require creating a small sliver building on the John Street lot, which is not in the museum's possession. But if that were offered to us, we could put a building there, relocate the equipment, and the early figures that we had been working off were $20 to $22 million.
John, can I say something?
Sure.
So, Jerry, thank you.
No problem.
You know, clearly this is it was reported in several of the papers that Susan, was grateful, and appreciated the attempts at 750,000. I understand that more accurately from her, she did tell Councilmember Chin that she was dissatisfied with the amount. She thanked her, which is polite.
Oh,
for her
yes.
work.
She's very polite.
She's very polite.
Yes.
All right. Now, clearly, when the Museum of New York came in, and the Seaport Museum was dead in its tracks. We all know that. We sat here, and was just amazed at how defunct and the condition of the ships and the lack of and to Susan's credit and to your credit and the Museum of New York, there was a tremendous turnaround. We saw a revitalization, and we were all very heartened by the exhibits and by the activity and by the life that was breathed back into our South Street Seaport Museum. Sandy, of course, drowned a lot of those hopes. We find ourselves now with the possibility, and I'm certainly would be interested in how Hughes, becoming the hero and the savior in this situation, particularly since Howard Hughes, and we welcome their business, but enjoys a wonderful deal for public land in the Seaport. And as you point out, the existence of the museum helps their business and certainly would bolster the summer months that I know Chris was talking about in terms of activities. But the museum requires something like $3,750,000
$3,950,000.
900 in operating, right?
Yes.
In its normal
For how
operating.
long?
That's our annual budget.
That's their annual budget.
3,590,000 is your.
900.
950.
$3,950,000.
Almost $4 million, all right? And so the question at this point is, how do we help you find the money for that operating, and also, of course, for capital grants to repair the buildings that Sandy has destroyed? And I think that's the dilemma that we're faced with at this point. And, you know, I know that EDC is not a grant agency in the city, but there is money in the city to be had, you know, through the coffers of the city. And does the museum have any direction for this committee in terms of where we might look for assistance? Because we've already been on record that it's so important. It's so important for us to keep this alive.
Right.
Now,
Well,
what
we're
can
actually
we
hoping
do
for
here for you at Community Board One?
We're hoping for your direction of where we might be able to go to for assistance. I mean, we've been in talks with EDC and DCA and, you know, Howard Hughes, and so we're kind of at a loss at this point.
Yeah, let me ask you, the Museum of the City of New York is a very big, large institution and a very well-known institution. How much, out of the $3,950,000 in operating, how much do you currently have right now?
We will probably run out of money by the end of June.
And doesn't the Museum of the City of New York have philanthropies and?
So the Museum of the City of New York is a separate
No, I
institution.
understand that,
We've maintained, you know, a complete separation between the two, with the exception of the fact that the Museum of the City of New York has donated the staff time of Susan Jones, Sarah Henry, our chief curator, our CFO,
I see what you're
our IT
saying. I got
people. Right.
I got it. You
It's
don't
a
have-
tremendous amount of support that of in-kind support that's been given to the Seaport Museum by the City Museum. So that if the Seaport Museum had to function on its own, without that support from Uptown,
It would have been closed.
It wouldn't have.
It would have shut down.
Yes.
Because it was basically, the museum was basically shut down. I mean, it
Right.
wasn't shut down formally, but it wasn't operating until Museum of the City of New York came in. And we thank you for that.
So thank you so much for the update. We have Chris Curry here. Can you provide your insight? Is so everything he said is correct?
No, I would say that Jerry's given you part of the story. I think it's important to know that this is primarily a negotiation between EDC and the Seaport Museum. And that we were brought into this obviously because we're a neighbor and they were asking for certain things that would impact our existing leasehold interest. And we were clear in that we wouldn't give up our leasehold interest, but we would work with them so they could keep their ships where they are now on the north side of Pier 16. So I don't know why that's, you know, not something that they think is anything other than what they would be. I don't know what else they would expect. We have a water taxi right now that works on the south side of 17, and we want to make sure that the south side of 17, Pier 17 that is, remains a viable area for us to use long term. And so when we made the commitment to keep the Ambrose where it is, we just said as long as it's not more than what the Ambrose already takes up, there's no issue. So I don't know why that's, you know, that's anything less than satisfactory for the museum. As it relates to the trades that Jerry was talking about, it was a three-party trade. There are things that we would have to give EDC. There are things that EDC is giving the Seaport Museum. So you're only getting part of the story. EDC, I believe, forgave something like a $7 million loan to the museum for the John Street lot. And one of the things the museum would get out of this would be the John Street lot. So they basically have their loan had been forgiven, and then they end up with the John Street lot again, which right now is not theirs, it's EDC's, and we actually have a right of first offer on the John Street lot. We were going to give that up as part of this whole thing that Jerry was talking about, and I'm not going to get into the details of everything, because I'm not privy to everything that the Seaport Museum and EDC were talking about, but the portions that we were interested in is the retail space that the museum wanted to continue to operate as retail space. What we told them was, you can't make as much money on this as we can, so it would be better for us to lease the space and somehow put money in your pocket, okay? EDC is saying, hey, wait a second here, we're forgiving a loan, we need to get a return back on our loan, you need to pay us some rent. I have no idea what the communication was between the two of them, okay, but we did not want to give up our retail space on the ground level. We didn't feel it was, one, necessary, and two, even if it wasn't necessary for them,
You're talking about the Heartland.
I'm talking about the corner that you mentioned, what was over near the John Street.
Building to be built,
Pardon me?
a building to be built.
That's the
No,
John Street lot.
These are existing spaces we already have. Okay, they wanted our ground floor retail space, Heartland Brewery, is an existing operation that actually went down when Sandy hit, but we expect Heartland to come back. We offered them a space next to Heartland that they could take, that would give them connectivity to Pier 16. We've given them many opportunities to work with us to figure out how to become much more visible within our program, ongoing. Our summer program is actually going to give them many opportunities to become much more visible. One of the things we want to do is actually work on the lighthouse, which is abysmal. It should be upgraded and energized with light, etc. And these are things that we haven't even talked to the museum about for two reasons. One, we're waiting for them to figure out how they're going to make their peace with EDC, and then ultimately we would talk to them about what they're going to be doing long term. But the issues with the South Street Seaport Museum are much too large for Howard Hughes Corporation to solve. Okay, and but we're ready, willing, and able to help any way we can. We think the commitment we've made through Councilmember Chin is a big commitment for a 1-year extension. So I think that that we've done a lot, and I think that we could potentially do more in the future, but we need to have a conversation with Seaport Museum. The most conversations we have with the museum, quite frankly, are here in this room. All right, you know my phone number. Susan knows my phone number. Have her call me. You know, and no, what I'm saying is, all the museum has to do is call us, talk to us.
Have a meeting, not a meeting like this, but a meeting between you, the museum, and EDC at one shot, so we could really get the story. Because we're hearing from you, we're hearing from them, and we're hearing from EDC, and nothing's making sense. Nothing's coming together.
It's not getting done.
It's not getting done, and we can't afford to lose the museum. We made that very clear from day one. The confusion I still have is what your property actually is compared to what belongs to EDC and what belongs to Howard Hughes. We're still asking for the meets and bounds. We've asked EDC at our last meeting to give us that. They never did. I mean, so they're a major part of this problem. There's a whole bunch of parts of the
Quick
problem.
question, is there someone from EDC in this room? Just want to make sure no one from EDC is here? Okay.
Especially the area under the city.
That would be a good
Yeah, they are.
opportunity to identify yourself.
John, it's not that difficult when you walk through the South Street Seaport to see what is controlled by Howard Hughes and what is controlled by the museum. The museum has space they're using right now on Water Street, the Bound, and next door to the Bound, and 213, 215 that Jerry mentioned. Those are the spaces they have on Water Street.
Okay.
On Fulton Street, they have their entrance and the little store right next to their entrance. Everything else on the ground level that's on Fulton and front is controlled by Howard Hughes Corporation.
John, I think that, I appreciate what Chris is saying. I thought I heard it's better if you operate the space, you could make more of a profit, and then you would give something to the museum? Is that what you said?
Yeah, but our landlord is EDC. okay?
Right.
Not the museum.
Right, no,
So that's all
I
I can tell you.
understand. Well, I think the meeting, just one second, Kath. I think the meeting is a great idea, but I think the John Street lot, we should be aware is an empty lot and would need then capital investment in order to create a building. The main thing that our aim here is to keep the museum afloat, no pun intended, all right, and the ships. And I think that we should generate a resolution out of committee here asking for the mayor's office, for EDC, for our elected officials, the city of New York, to come together along with the other entities in the Seaport, such as Howard Hughes, all right, and the other businesses, to find a way to work out the continued fulfillment and growth of the museum prior to Sandy, get it back on its feet. I think we should do.
Financial stability.
And financial.
Yeah, but I think even before Sandy, even before Sandy, with the Museum of City, New York, taking over, they were still hurting. They still weren't operating in a way where they could be physically sound.
They had quite, as we know, quite a nut to crack when they came back in, but they were well
They were
along their
pleasant,
way.
yeah, they
We
were.
could see how proud we were of the exhibits.
The challenges that we face is that the museum, as I mentioned, is invisible. It has a very narrow entrance on Fulton Street, and then the galleries are up on start on the third floor. So that's a major, whether it's pre-Sandy or post-Sandy, that's a major hurdle for the museum.
So, Chris, you had your hand raised?
I had a question. I disagree with the visibility of the museum. I've had the conversation with Susan many different times. There are ways that we can make them much more visible. That being said, I had a question about the 20 to 22 million I think you mentioned. What is that for? Do you have a breakdown of what the money would be used for?
It was to relocate all of the equipment, all of the mechanical equipment out of the basement into a dedicated building on
So
John Street.
EDC is not doing that?
Unless you know something I don't know.
So the room on the second level where we're supposed to have, because we have a part of our space on the second level that EDC wants us to give back for this electrical room, etc. Is your electrical room? I thought it was the electrical room for the entire building.
No, that's for the building separate, independent of the museum.
Right. It's so complicated. Even EDC gets very confused about how things are arranged down in that basement. So now I've had to take numerous people from EDC and.
So how much of that is for the electrical or the infrastructure of the building?
The 22 million? I mean, we've just put, that's the ballpark number that we came up with for the building and for the relocation of the equipment.
I bet, it's building for what?
The construction of the building
So
on John
this
Street.
does not
the John Street
include
lot.
fixing your elevator?
That includes the
fixing
John
your
Street lot.
escalator?
Yes.
And no, what the 22 million, from what I understand, was,
What does it take you to get back open in the building? is what I'm
forget about
asking.
the John Street lot right now. What
Forget
does it
about the
take-
John Street
yeah.
lot for now. What does it take you to get back in your building?
Well, we need to climatize the galleries. And we can't climatize the galleries without the proper equipment that's currently down in the basement. Nobody wants to do the repairs to the equipment that's down in the basement because it's in a flood zone or in landfill area. If we pay for it now and want to relocate it later, FEMA's not going to pay for it twice. And we're not even sure what we could get from FEMA in the first place. So it doesn't make any sense to do
How much?
repairs. And the repair, and the equipment that's down there was faulty when we got here. So when the City Museum took over the South Street Seaport Museum in October of 2011, the South Street Seaport Museum had been closed since February of 2011. So that's 8 months where all the systems were left idle. And prior to that, the Seaport Museum had not really maintained the systems very well. So we spent from October until really the last minute before we opened in January, going through all of the systems, getting everything, to be able to get everything back up online. And then during that time that we were open from January 2012 to October 29th, 2012, it's been a constant state of repairs of those systems. So they never worked properly in the first place. And now after having been completely submerged in the filthy surge from Hurricane Sandy, Lord knows what those systems would be like. If
So
we
what's the
actually did get
ballpark?
them.
Wait, Paul, 1 second.
Paul.
Yeah.
It's Paul.
Let's go back to what you said, John, and I think you're right. To put that kind of meeting together, because everything is floundering. I mean, one group has all of the information, another group has a piece of it, and another group has nothing, no information. And until we move forward, some kind of joint meeting.
I totally agree with you, but we have Matt Migiano from Councilmember Chin's office here, and I want to
I
know
know him.
where your office is on this. Do you have a different perspective that you can provide?
Well, from my understanding of conversations that Councilmember Chin has had with Susan, that there was some, I don't know what the $22 million figure was, something that we had seen in the press, which I guess is this, what it would cost to move mechanicals into a building that you would construct dedicated specifically for mechanical use, right? I know, and I don't know what the number is, but I know that the Seaport Museum has made capital requests to the Speaker's office as well as to Councilmember Chin's office. I don't know what the exact numbers are. Do you happen to know?
Not off my head.
Okay. I was trying to find out while I was listening and writing at the same time. Going back to the $750,000 figure, that was something that had come directly from the museum, and rather than see it overlaid or outlaid to the museum over a 5-year period, working with the mayor's office, we were able to secure that in a 1-year period. I think that we're very much interested, the council member is dedicated to making sure that the museum remain a community asset, remain an institution that is part of the Seaport and is part of Lower Manhattan. And we're working very closely with EDC as well as the Department of Cultural Affairs to make that happen. Part of the 3-month extension was an urging from the council member to find a way to keep the Seaport down here because we want very much for the museum's home to remain down at the Seaport. So we're as indebted to the success of the museum so far and as committed to its future success as well.
Yeah, Michael Skidmore.
Just a thought. The space over top of the brewery, which used to be Sweets, okay, now
It's a
vacant.
big loss too.
Yeah, it is. Vacant. So that space you're talking about, that's where the electrical room is gonna go?
No, John Street, the John Street lot.
No, not the lot, not the building. There's an electrical room going to be built
Over there.
for you guys, for the, somebody you knew about the electrical room for the
No, that's
building?
what Chris was talking about, an electrical room over on John Street.
On the second level.
Oh, on
On
John.
the second level.
Okay.
So does anybody
the
have
opposite
maps
corner.
of the area that we're talking about right
But
now?
I'm thinking that area where Sweets used to be, would that be where he could move his equipment? That belongs to them, I'm sure. It's on top of the brewery.
I can't hear what he's saying, speak
Okay. The space on top of the brewery, okay, used
The
to be
space
called-
on top of the
used to be
brewery is
Sweets.
not what we're talking about. He's talking about the second level above what was Floppy Louie at one time.
Right, but the space on top of the brewery is a vacant now, right?
No, that's a retail tenant, it's an Ann Taylor space.
On the second floor there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what this committee really cares about is that the South Street Seaport Museum and its boats stay. And if you are on the Brooklyn Bridge side in that park, what draws your attention to Lower Manhattan are those historic ships that are docked, and you want to be part of it. You want to come down to the South Street Seaport because of the historic ships. So it is the heart and soul of the Seaport, is that museum and your historic ships. So what I'm hearing tonight is that we need to do a resolution, that we actually need to get everybody in the same room. Howard Hughes, South Street Seaport Museum, EDC, Community Board 1, all pertinent elected officials, do a walkabout. So we can go through those spaces, so we can't have people pointing fingers at each other about not understanding what's going back.
Everybody's pointing and
And
nobody's.
so we have a meeting scheduled probably for May 8th or May 9th. This meeting will happen before then, and then we can feedback that information to this committee then.
Good.
Does that sound like that's something that would work out for the Seaport
Sure.
Museum? Would it work out for the Howard Hughes Corporation?
Sure.
Okay,
Right,
so,
but I also think, Catherine, with all due respect, that in the resolution you're speaking of, we should not only ask for the meeting, but we should ask all of those entities to help us to find funding for the museum to keep it afloat. I think-
financial stability,
Right.
yes, sustainability.
Right. I think that everybody has an interest, including Howard Hughes certainly, has an interest as much as this community does in keeping the museum a viable entity with everything that has been created, laudably. So I would like to see that also as part of our.
You need about $4 million a year.
Yes.
That's it.
Are you,
Okay, so,
are you making the motion?
Yes, I am.
Just do it, restate the motion just so we can.
okay, I will restate it,
Okay.
which was the 4 key parties, the South Street Seaport Museum, the EDC, the Howard Hughes Corporation, Community Board 1, and our elected officials. We have a meeting, preferably on-site, walking with maps in hand, so we understand, everyone understands the issue, so they can't point fingers, that they don't understand one space from another, and that the economic viability and sustainability of the museum is, something we're all gonna get, work together.
Is paramount,
Is paramount.
and that all of these entities help in, assist in that sustainability.
Correct.
Second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? You doing the count again?
8, 9, 10.
Any
Public, I'm one public member.
And
Is there any
John,
other public members here?
No, there's one.
and John, the other thing is that we're on record, Community Board 1 is on record, asking for, and Catherine, I think you were going to arrange for that committee, the task force, to be of interested parties for the planning of the Seaport area, right? We did that at our last full board meeting with the Save Our Seaport.
The resolution. that we
Yeah, the
passed.
resolution that we
Yeah.
passed, having that task force set up, like the one that was done for Civic Center, but for the Seaport, so that we could have all of the parties enter into, a give and take about what we'd like to see in the Seaport area.
Okay.
No problem.
So,
No problem.
yeah, good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, really, yeah.
Sorry, can you elaborate about the task force? What had come out of a lot of the discussions with the council member's office prior to the vote by the full council about the Pier 17 application specifically was sort of an interim group of meetings, let's say, that would give a sense of what the different stakeholders were interested in seeing for future proposals for the Seaport area. Is that accurate, Paul Kovitz?
That was something that was asked for, yeah.
Yeah, I think the council member's office was interested in facilitating those discussions, so I just wanted to.
I think you
what
were,
you were
yeah.
referring to with respect to the Civic Center specifically was a task force that EDC had agreed to put together in order to inform an RFP process.
Right.
So just recognizing the slight difference
It's different, yeah.
there, but I think it is very important to sort of get folks together and to talk about
Right, like
sort
the
of a
charrette.
shared vision
Right.
for Pier 7, or I'm sorry, for the larger
For the
Seaport
Seaport,
area. Just noting that subtle difference in that what EDC was doing was convening a task force that would inform an RFP process.
Right.
Which this is more of a planning charrette where all the different stakeholders come together and sort of enunciate what they want to see happen for their community.
Yes.
Right?
I agree.
And the
Got it.
support
Okay.
of the museum.
You got it.
Yes.
And
Well,
of
yes,
course,
I mean,
Barbara-
it could include, Michael, it could include an emphasis on like what could be done to support the museum, sure. I mean, that's always part of the
There you go.
discussion. Like a planning charrette is meant to get everybody's sort of hopes and dreams, as it were, both real and unreal, into a comprehensive, cohesive document.
Right.
Out in the open. Yep.
Oh,
Right,
absolutely.
The interest map really wasn't just so that it isn't simply EDC and a real estate entity and one other in a closed room making decisions. We wanted the community and the other interested parties to be
And that's
very
what the
involved.
motion called for.
And that's what the motion called for.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Just
Okay,
wanted
let's
to-
move on. Item number 3 was withdrawn, so we don't need that. But item 4, 9 Fulton Street, are the applicants here? Oh, yeah, sure, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand. Yeah, ma'am.
I'm sitting here and I'm just appalled. I mean, I'm a resident, 25-year resident of the Seaport. And, I'm sitting here and I'm hearing about Howard Hughes and the Seaport Museum.
Guys, please.
Could you,
Please.
please not be rude? Howard Hughes Corporation is only interested in one thing, building condos and hotels in the Seaport. They are not interested in the museum, they are not interested in the ships, and when you guys voted to approve that zoning change, you sealed the fate of the Seaport.
Let me
for now.
respond to that. That zoning change will prevent will prevent a tower from going up on the Seaport.
It doesn't prevent.
It
the
absolutely
tower.
does, because the floor area ratio was 10.0, which would have meant a 60-story tower. That was
So what
cut
is it
down
now?
3.2, which is a 6-story building.
Right.
So it did prevent, and that's the reason we supported that zone.
6-story buildings from Maiden Lane all the way to the Brooklyn Bridge.
But right now, they could have gone with a
So-
60-story building.
All right,
However, you do have a point well taken that any new ULURP could ask for a change in zoning.
And they would have to come back
And
to
they would
this
have to
committee
come to us and to city
believe
council.
me, this committee will not support something
Right,
like that.
but
Now,
that
Paul,
was the
please.
issue.
well, I also want to know
Sorry.
why you didn't nail down advantages for the community and for the Seaport Museum before you agreed to vote for that zone change. Now, the elephant in the room, I don't know if you read that Downtown Express article about the redacted letter of intent.
Right, we did.
Did you
That
people,
redacted
did you
le-
people see a redacted
Yeah,
letter
but,
of
no, we
intent?
didn't, but it
or an
doesn't matter.
unredacted?
It doesn't matter. We
No,
saw
it matters
Let
to
me
the
explain,
community.
ma'am. You want me to explain to you, or you want to go? That letter, that redacted letter of intent is null and void at this point. Because of the new zoning, they cannot do what's in that letter of intent with regard to towers, with regard to hotels and anything like that. That letter of intent was done before the new zoning came into effect. Had we not changed the zoning, then you're right, then that letter of intent would have been very dangerous
Okay,
to
how
us.
many square feet of residential space and hotel space can Howard Hughes Corporation conceivably put into the Seaport?
Freeport, Levish, Michael, yeah,
I
yeah.
actually, my name is Matt Vigiano. I'm Councilmember Chin's land use planner. This is something that we had thought about a lot after the rezoning. The way that a land use attorney or an architect or an engineer would look at this is with a capped floor area ratio allowance of 3.4. That's how much you can sort of multiply your footprint of a building by in order to obtain your maximum square footage. So when you look at what has been rezoned, the area runs from about Pier 15 to the Brooklyn Bridge. Anything sort of south of Maiden Lane is outside of that zoning area. There's a much different zoning that's more in line with the Lower Manhattan contextual zone. But the restrictions there limit the square footage for commercial, residential, or even community facility space. So we were very happy to see a more contextual zone because it would mean that you would have buildings that are more akin to the Seaport Historic
Yes, but
District.
you're going to have buildings on the walkway to the Brooklyn Bridge, blocking the view of the Brooklyn Bridge and the waterfront to all people in this country, in the city, because people came from out of town from Texas, carpetbaggers, that build gated communities and golf courses, and they came to our beloved city, to a great landmark in our city, and they got it for nothing. They got it for $1 million a year, and they can build, I don't know how many square feet of
Well, the
hotels
cost
and residential
deferred
spaces.
by the city is much larger than just $1 million a year. The city of New York is no longer going to be outlaying capital dollars for the upkeep of pure
Should
infrastructure.
have been a little bit more creative, and you had the chance.
I won't disagree with you there, but
In starting the New Amsterdam market in the Tin Building and the New Market Building, and incubating small businesses in the Seaport organically instead of bringing in another shopping mall. Now, these people from Howard Hughes, they know the shopping mall is not
if I
going to be.
may, just for a moment.
Can I finish?
Absolutely.
The shopping mall is not going to be the thing that makes their profit. It's the hotels and the residential spaces that they wanted all along, and it was given to them by
John, I
Margaret
think-
Chin, by Christine Quinn, and by the community board. And everyone in our community knows it, and it was sneaked through after Sandy, when half of our community is gone. They're not in the community.
Can I ask you a question? You said you're a resident down there for how many years? How many years have you been living there?
25, something
Have
like
you ever
that.
come to a community
Yes.
board meeting?
I
Did
have.
you voice it? Did you voice your
I didn't even
opinion
know
on
this was
this
going
thing?
on.
This has been advertised all over the place. The press has done stories on it
The life-
over and over.
Oh, yeah, well,
So,
since, we've been involved since.
Yes, good.
I was just gonna say, I'd be happy to talk to you outside or after the meeting to answer some more of your questions if you want.
Well, I'm not done. I would like the community board to answer about why the community was lied to at the city council hearing, which I went to, where the zoning change was made, and it was said to us by Margaret Chin and everybody else that no one had ever seen any plans by Howard Hughes Corporation for this area.
We have it.
Well,
We have it.
the letter of
The letter of
intent was
intent-
what they want to do. Maybe they can't do it.
Maybe you're not hearing me.
I'm hearing.
That letter of intent is null and void unless they change the zoning again.
Right.
The only way they could do that, they gotta come to us to get us to do it, and they have to go back to the councilwoman and go back to the city planning commission. That's not gonna happen. They could try it, but believe me, it's not gonna pass this board, and it certainly won't pass the city council. So again, we could go on and on all night about the same thing. You may disagree. That's the answer. There's no other answer we
If
can
a
give you.
gigantic shopping mall and the total privatization of the South Street Seaport could pass this board, anything could pass this board.
Okay, very good. Yes.
I just want to talk about and bring up the obvious, which is July 5th. And you guys know this, but I'm going to restate it so that it's right sitting there. July 5th is Susan's last date. Jerry said he's running out of money. By that I mean, I take it that that's July 5th. Susan is very definitely not going to extend this thing. The Seaport's going to be gone after July 5th, unless you guys, with your meetings and whatever, talk very, very quickly and she sees something concrete. Because if she doesn't see something concrete, it's going to be the end of all this. Now, I don't know what happens to the ships if the Seaport Museum closes. I think there's some state laws that come into play regarding museum closings and things of that nature. But nevertheless, the entire character of this neighborhood, the entire character of the Seaport is going to disappear unless something is done in the next
We totally
65
agree.
days.
We totally
And I'm
agree.
just
But
saying
again,
that.
I want to reiterate,
We're working on it.
the problems at the South Street Seaport Museum
I know.
began a long time ago. They did not begin with GGP, they did not begin with Howard Hughes, or with Rouse for that matter. It was mismanaged. The South Street Seaport Museum was mismanaged. It was brought down to its knees. And if it wasn't for the Museum of the City of New York to come in and do what they did, there would be no museum. We agree, and we know the museum is very important, and we're going to do everything we have to do to make sure that it survives. We are going to be getting that meeting together within the next few weeks. By our next meeting, we will have an answer. Yes, ma'am.
I wonder if the museum was being mismanaged when Frank Sciami was the developer, was the head of the board of trustees, if he was mismanaging it so that it would close and end up going to Hughes Corporation.
Good question.
You want to know, that's a great question. I really don't have the answer. All we know is that by the time we found out about the problems at the museum, it was just so far gone. And again, thank God for the Museum of the City of New York. I mean, they saved this museum. We have to do whatever we have to do on our end to protect the museum and to keep it alive.
And why is there no floor being put into the Water Street Gallery by EDC? I think that EDC is in bed with Howard Hughes Corporation.
All right, but that's, so we need to have this meeting.
I can respond to both of those. One, no, Frank Sciami and Howard Hughes Corporation have no agreement for anything. And two, we're not in bed with the EDC, they're our landlord. We follow
We
our
need to
lease.
move forward.
Okay.
We need to get this meeting,
Yeah,
not,
soon.
we're not within 2 weeks, but
As soon as we can, we're going to have
as
that
soon as
meeting
we
set up.
can.
Send out an email.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on. Item 4, 9 Fulton Street, is the applicant here? How you doing? Why don't you tell us what